Okay, then.
So again, a few minutes late, but nevertheless, here we are introducing Dr. Nandini Bhattacharya Panda yet again. She's a Sanskritist and an anthropologist who's worked a lot on the lectures and on Hindu law. She's written a number of books. She's been commissioned by the Oxford University Press also to write books. She's lectured all over the world. She's an alumni of the University of Oxford. And we are so happy that today she'll be sharing her research on the lecture community in quest of roots. So Dr. Nandini, please, the mic is yours. And at this point, I would urge everybody to put their mics and their videos off, please, except the speaker.
Okay. So thank you, Sonali. Thank you, everyone who are present here. The title of my presentation, I'm sorry I can't share any picture. This is very important for this presentation, but I'm helpless, and so is Sonali. The title of my presentation is The Lepcha Community of the Eastern Himalayas, Quest for the Roots. I'm so grateful to Sonali, the Himalayan Research Institute, and her team to invite me here. I'm honored. Friends and eminent scholars, today's presentation is dedicated to the memory of Lapan Sonamswering Lepcha, who left this world only on Thursday, 30th July, at the age of 96. A musical maestro, poet, institution builder, he remained the key figure in the cultural movement of the Lepcha community in Sikkim and Darjeeling. The documentary film actually has a lot on Sonamswering Lepcha. In my nomadic academic trajectory, since 2006, I've been pursuing research and study on the ethnic community of the northeastern and northeastern Himalayas on different aspects. For example, culture, heritage, identity, history, and law. In the eastern Himalayas, I mainly focused on the cultural and identity movement of the two communities, Lepcha and Mangar, or Mangar communities in Sikkim and Darjeeling, as fellow of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies. I published a book in 2015 under the title Culture, Heritage and Identity, the Lepcha and Mangar communities of Sikkim and Darjeeling. I'm fortunate that after the publication of the book, the Primitive Tribal Board of the Department of Empowerment and Justice in Sikkim made me an academic expert, and the Lepcha Tribal Board in Darjeeling, Kalimpong, they invited me to prepare a documentary film which I could not show. A year of making of this film unfolded a wonderful cultural treasure of our country, and I strongly feel the urgent necessity to undertake a comprehensive documentation of the old and rich culture of this community, the Lepcha community. I will share some of the reflections of my long-standing research on the Lepcha community. The Lepcha community, or Mutanchirongkap, or Rong of Sikkim and Darjeeling Hills, is one of the oldest communities in the world. And they are the original inhabitants, defined as indigenous in the Western terminology of the Eastern Himalayas. They inhabited in Sikkim since time immemorial, when these two regions were not divided by geographical or political borders since 1835 into Darjeeling Tract and Sikkim under the colonial state, and the Kingdom of Sikkim became under the British suzerainty. Like almost all original inhabitants, or indigenous communities in the world, the Lepchas also lost their history within quote. More importantly, their history had been rewritten in the mainstream narratives, especially in the colonial, ethnographic, anthropological discourses during the late 18th and early 19th century. I have undertaken attempts to retrace the history within the code, the history which had been distorted, misrepresented, and finally obliterated from the mainstream narrative. History, debate, history, debate, debates, discourses, and problematic. My study of the lecture community dwell on two problematic. The first is about the concept of indigeneity, and second is about history. The problematic regarding indigeneity within quote, address a global definition. I here refer to two significant studies by Jeremy Waldron and James Anaya, but there are so many other authors, as you know. In the Western Hemisphere and Africa, indigeneity is a legal and political movement. The global definition of indigeneity is always in quote, loosely connects the Lepchas to other counterparts in the world who had to face displacement, impoverishment, and exclusion following conquest, colonization, and mainstream domination. It is indeed a fact that ethnic trajectory of all those communities do not follow a linear path. Each community has different histories of displacement. Despite the historical and contextual difference, displacement and cultural amnesia is common to almost all the original inhabitants of a land in the global context. In India, the concept of indigeneity within quote, did not gain currency because of several reasons. I'm not going into that discourse. The word tribe is used with almost similar connotation. You may or may not agree, that's a debatable point. It should be noted here that the Lepcha community is a scheduled tribe, albeit the community of Sikkim and Darjeeling claims that claim the status of indigenous group within quote. I could not ascertain whether their knowledge and consciousness about the global movement, the former government in Sikkim accorded the Lepchas of Sikkim the status of backward primitive tribe. The next question is how one would write the history of a historically marginalized community who are displaced, culturally homogenized, and virtually lost their cultural memory through the process of subjugation, proselytization, intimidation, inferiorization, and marginalization. I would posit here that there are a number of redeeming aspects which may enable a scholar to retrace history. Again, history within quote. In the first place, the lectures are not an oral community, although there is hardly any archive survived from the past. In the pre-colonial time, they had their written tradition, grammar, syllable, lexicon, literature, liturgical texts, poetry, song, and textualized aesthetic tradition. The textual tradition of the lecture community had been preserved in Namtho Namtar. Those are mostly liturgical texts, but some, although belong to the genre of literary expositions, like the poetics and some other aesthetics. Some texts still survive despite the onslaughts of the community. Very few texts survive due to the traumatic past during the colonial and also post-colonial period. Interestingly, memory of the tradition and the past had been a powerful instrument of the Lepcha to endure the ethnic trauma and to resist the ethnic subjugation and political exclusion. Memory does not always reproduce an authentic past or history, but collective memory does indicate the history of a time and a group of people, as emphasized by Jan Vansina. Lepcha community of Sikkim and Darjeeling have been engaged to reclaim their identity and history within quote, by essentializing their memory, the oral folkloric tradition from time immemorial. Who are the Lepchas? The ethnic name of the Lepcha is wrong, and hence their language is known as Rongring. In fact, the nomenclature of as Lepcha is distorted anglicized form of the word Lapche, coined by the Nepalese immigrants in Darjeeling. The term literally means scurrilous speakers. The British improvised the term as Lepcha. Ethnically and numerically, the Lepcha community exists much below the margins in the ethnic map of India, and and, and as such is one of the most vulnerable communities or tribes in Sikkim and his eastern Himalayan region. According to 2011 census, the population of the Lepcha in Sikkim is approximately 42,909. Just imagine Sikkim was their original habitat, and the number in Darjeeling is much lower, which seem to be comparatively very low in terms of 540,851 total tribal population in the state. Lepcha population in Sikkim is predominantly rural, having little access to education and livelihood opportunities other than subsistence agricultural activities, and they live below poverty level. Fortunately or unfortunately, those people in the rural areas have been still retaining to a certain extent the ancestral tradition and culture, although growing urbanization in Sikkim reaches those regions with both positive and negative implications. I don't have to explain the positive and negative implications. By positive, I mean they are having more access to education and employment. By negative, I imply they are losing their culture more and more. Government of India accorded the Lepcha community scheduled tribe status in 1950 when Sikkim was not a part of Indian state, because Sikkim was integrated only in 1975. In 1978, government of Sikkim endorsed scheduled tribe status for the Lepchas by the constitutional order. Further to ST status, the government of Sikkim declared the Lepchas, as I mentioned before, as backward primitive tribe in 2006. The community is getting access to education and employment, while the task of preserving the tradition and heritage is becoming more difficult. It is a very complex story. History and folklore. India is a plural, or to use the post-colonial paradigm, a multicultural society. The country is inhabited by myriad communities, big or small, powerful or weak, oral and textual, etc. Those communities apparently have no history, written or documented, or to be precise, they are hidden from history. However, most of these communities possess rich ethnocultural, linguistic, and aesthetic tradition, and some even have tangible heritage sites, though in ruins, to claim a tangible, glorious history of the past. I observe as a social science scholar that since the British period, the indigenous communities categorized as tribes by the British have some specimens have become specimens of anthropological research, sorry, by othering them from the mainstream, and the tradition still continues, more or less. The anthropologists recorded their physiognomy, characteristic states such as violent or timid, whether they are suitable for joining the war, like First World War or Second World War, because many of the lectures they joined the specifically the Second World War. Violent or timid, rituals relating to marriage, birth, and death, legend and myth. The discourses had been primarily generated to create a binary, dominant versus marginal, mainstream versus peripheral, the other India in some, other in quote. The lecture community of Sikkim and Darjeeling belongs to this other India, the marginal and peripheral, hidden from history. As I found out through my research, the community did not lack in history till the middle of the 19th century, before the advent of the British in the region. The Lepcha community did not have a migration story in their myth and folklore. The Lepchas defined their early habitat as Himalayang, a hidden paradise, as it means. There is hardly any reference to ascertain whether people outside the Himalayan region had any knowledge about the existence of the Lepcha community. The community had been introduced to the global ethnography after the establishment of the colonial state in 1835 within the construct of quote, primitive, savage, aboriginal, autochthon, and finally a dying race. The politics of dying race is a different story. I would briefly mention that before the British arrived in Darjeeling and Sikkim, most of the land belonged to the Lepchas. And the British, they took away those lands to construct the imperial edifice and also the tea gardens. So it is kind of politics, an ethnic politics, to attribute kind of dying, dwindling, vanishing uh, to the quote unquote indigenous tribes, here the original inhabitants or the tribes like the Maori in New Zealand. The first hint of trouble in their paradise, Mile Line, happened in 1642 when Tibetan invaders treacherously took over Sikkim, in which present-day Darjeeling was also included in the guise of allies. The Lepcha community lost their direct political and military control over the land. Sources are collected from Sprigg, Himansingh Chemjong, and popular history about the Tibetan context and a troubled paradise. G.B. Mainwaring, an army officer in Darjeeling, who compiled a grammar of wrong, that is Lepcha, wrong language as it exists in Darjeeling and Sikkim Hills, which was first published in 1876, provided an account of the Lepcha kings who ruled the region since 14th century. Mainwaring offered his discourse on the basis of, quote, earliest veritable information, unquote, in his view. Turve was the earliest known Lepcha king in Sikkim. Mainwaring was of opinion that Turve ruled around 14th century. According to his account, after the death of King Turve, three successive Lepcha kings, Tur Sangpa-no, Tur Ageng-pa-no, and Tur Agek-pa-no, ruled Sikkim. He continued that after the death of Tur Agek, the throne was usurped by the Tibetans, leading to the commencement of a new era. He, however, mentioned, that is Mainwaring, that the early Tibetan kings married Lepchas and retained their customs. Mainwaring further narrated, I quote, circumstances supervent to detract the Lepchas from the happy state of primitiveness in which the Lepchas live. The words primitive, savage are used frequently, always, along with dying race about the Lepchas by the colonial administrators in Sikkim and Darjeeling. Mainwaring explained that the primitiveness, within quote, intervened by the proselytization by Buddhist Lamaism. Mainwaring did not cite any archive to substantiate his claim, but extant sources show that Lepchas enjoyed substantial power under Tibetan regime. Lepcha ministers and aristocrats played formidable role under the Chogyal kings of Sikkim before the British rule. R.K. Sprigg, an eminent philologist who was also conversant in Lepcha language offered, glimpses on the status and power enjoyed by the Lepcha nobility in Chogyal's court. He derived his information from varied sources, including archival sources, history, and chronicle written by the Nine Chogyal, gazetteer, and other non-conventional sources, and indirect references cited by various authors. The Lepcha paradise finally fractured and received mortal blow following the British occupation of Darjeeling in 1835 by a deed of grant on the 1st February 1835. Significantly, the deed of grant was signed and sealed simultaneously in Lepcha and Hindustani language. Lepcha was the language for the majority in Sikkim and Darjeeling, and the official language in Major Lard's time was Lepcha. In 1839, Dr. Campbell became the superintendent and agent of the British government in Darjeeling. He abandoned Lepcha language for official correspondence and introduced Hindustani. Instead, he wanted to do it also in Sikkim. Subsequently, Sikkim was reduced to the status of a suzerain state while they exercised the real power in the state, the British, here I mean. The Lepcha community did not surrender to the new sovereign, to the British. It is recorded in a contemporary discourse. I quote, it's a long passage quoted from O'Malley. While at Padamtan, we witnessed a scene he was quoting from Lloyd's narrative. We witnessed a scene which strongly illustrated the independence and hospitable character of the lectures. Two official chaprasis, deputed by Colonel Lloyd, arrived at the village. Dingpun is the Lepcha headband, with a copy of the proclamation announcing the taking possession by the British government of all the territory between the Balasan and Mahananda, ceded by the Sikkim Raja. But by some omission or mischance, this British proclamation was unaccompanied by corresponding announcement from the Raja to the people of the petition of the portion ceded. The Dingpon received the men hospitably from our residence with him. He loaded them with rice, Indian corn, chilies, tobacco, etc. But he refused to receive the proclamation, and, and on the following morning repeated the refusal, declining even to allow of its being was posted against the wall of his house. Although he read and explained the British official to his neighbors, whom he summoned for the purpose. The Dingpun boldly asserted that, quote, he and his father before him had duly and faithfully served the Maharaja, from, from whom they received favors, and therefore he could not receive no other master without the Raja's order. The Dikpun further added that the Maharaja, quote, received me gladly and feeds me well, unquote. Whereas, whereas the, I quote, colonial Sahib, unquote, on a visit, quote, gives me nothing to put in my mouth. Although when the Sahib log or their visitors come to my village, I give them what I can and pay them every attention. As is evident, the unnamed Dingpun did realize quite well that the proclamation had been meant to sound death knell for the community. He, on behalf of his community, did not compromise with dignity, rather accepted a prospect of annihilation from the land. A subsequent history of Darjeeling and Sikkim tells a sorry tale of colonial exploitation of the geography and the natural resources. Dispossession from ancestral land had been followed by displacement from cultural memory, language, religion, rituals, and ancestral traits. With the coming of the missionaries, they were proselytized to Christianity en masse. The Lepchas were not an oral community in the pre-colonial time. They had language, script, and vast corpus of liturgical texts, and so also text on poetry and poetics. Lepcha language was also the official language in the region before the coming of the British. The deed of grant that obliterated this language from use and led the Lepcha language towards the process of homogenization. Lepcha language had been abandoned as the medium in the official correspondence. Some missionaries learned the language to translate the Bible in Lepcha language as a means to enhance the number of conversion of the Lepchas into Christianity. Actually, now Most of the Lepchas in Darjeeling and Sikkim, they are Christians. But now they refuse to, many of them refuse to say, and they always say that we are the Lepchas, we are devoted to our ancestral religion and rituals. The Lepcha, by the end of the 19th century, this community was outnumbered by the people from the neighboring regions. Christopher Moseley, in his book under the title Encyclopedia of the World's Endangered Languages, published from Routledge in 2007, included Lepcha as one of the endangered languages in the world. Lepcha community was reduced within the attribute of a dying race, vanishing tribe. Most of the people withdrew to the remote corners of the hills, although much of the hill land, especially in Darjeeling, had transformed into tea garden. Displaced, impoverished, and marginalized, the Lepcha community lost their cultural memory, ethnic traits, and language. The British officials created a reserve within quote, in Zambu, North Sikkim, for the Lepcha, apparently to exclude them from interaction with the dominant culture and help them protect their quote unquote pristine tradition. The story, however, does not end entirely in tragic note. The Lepcha community in both Sikkim and Darjeeling have initiated their ethnic journey from historic insignification, inferiorization, and marginalization to the invocation of Mayan land, the symbol of their glorious past. The documentary on the Darjeeling Hill actually unfolds the cultural trajectory towards the ethnic revival, which unfortunately could not be shown now. It is the people in Darjeeling who are more engaged in this trajectory than the state, because the state does not provide enough support to protect the language and the culture. At least it was, they did not for the entire time after independence. In Sikkim, however, the state offered significant moral and institutional support towards revival of the culture, religion, language, and literature. The story is still complex. As an academic expert of the primitive tribal board in Sikkim, I could realize that the primitive tribal board was primarily set up for the Lepcha community is a more symbolic gesture than an active body. Most of the schemes originally undertaken for economic, cultural, educational progress remain unimplemented. The state has introduced Lepcha language in the curriculum of school, college, and university, a significant step indeed, yet the impact seems to be very limited on the popular imagination. The community, however, celebrate each religious festival and traditional rites, and the ethnic movement is basically confined uh, to the celebration of the festivals, but the language, they have taken language to a different level. I will show you some books. They are engaged in reviving their age-old bonding with nature, the hills, mountains, and rivers. Kanchenjunga is the guardian deity of this community. I will end by telling a story. In the first place, the as it is said, the Lepcha community was a hunter-gatherer community. But each Lepcha person would say that they would hunt the animals just as much as they needed. They would not hunt, it was not a game for them. It was a livelihood and necessity. And when some of the lectures, they became very, they became proud of their prowess and strength. The mother nature became very angry. And here, like many other old communities, sorry, we also get a deluge story among the Lepcha community. The river was overflowed and the people only got refuge in a very high hill called Tendang Hill, and most of the lectures they died, and the natural habitat also it was in trouble. Then they approached a bird. That bird, the lectures told them that please go to the mother nature and on our behalf request her to be and to be kind to us, and we will never do it again. The lecture went to the mother nature with a crop in her in its beak. The mother nature accepted the apology on behalf of the lectures, and that she told the bird that you drop the crop on the soil. So it is then the water receded and the lecture community they survived. It is a very symbolic story. There are also some other stories like Tista and Rangit. Tista, Rongnu was the female river and Rangit was the male river. Rangit's vanity, it was became very high and he overflowed all the places surrounding the the area he used to flow. And again the mother nature became very angry, and he uh, they were supposed to meet in a point, and he reached earlier. They were supposed to meet at the same time. Then mother nature became very angry and she carved the power of and Tista became more powerful, the female river. And if you go to if you go to Darjeeling, there is this conference, Tista Rangit conference. It is a beautiful place. It is also called the Lovers Meet, where Tista is flowing with all strength and vigor, while Rangit is a very narrow river. For the lectures, Kanchenjunga is the guardian deity, and when mountaineering was a sport, it started as a sport for the British. But lectures told the British that go to, you can climb any mountain, but never ever try to climb the peak of Kanchenjunga because it is our heavenly abode. Perhaps because Kanchenjunga is a very difficult climb, it is possible, but British, they hardly tried to climb Kanchenjunga. The story of the cultural revival of any marginal community is long and complex. The state, dominant groups, popular perceptions about the community, the limited ability or inability of the engaged and dedicated members are all mingled in this trajectory towards a revival, either to push it forward or pull it back. But lectures are not a dying race. They are actively engaged to retrieve their past, to revive the cultural identity. And when I use the word they, I consider myself included within they, not us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandini ji. That was a very enlightening lecture on lectures. I did not know anything about them, and really, it's been a delight knowing about a community that you work so closely with. And I so wish that we could have seen the film. But what I'll do is I'll put the film and your lecture together, because I think that is very important. Your commentary on the work, and I'll just discuss with you whether you want the lecture first or the film first. How do you want me to put it on YouTube? I'll do it the way you prefer. So thank you so much. And
And can I show some books? Like, this is the lecture songs.
of course. Okay, these are the lectures.
And this is a Bengali translation of Lepcha drama. The drama, those are meant for reviving the cultural heritage. This is a book, Lepcha Speaking Easy, for informal schools, because most of the children go to the formal schools. And you will be very, this is, Mahashweta Devi, a
Yeah.
great literary figure.
Okay.
10 books, 10 stories translated in Lepcha language. And the beginning, Himalayan journal. This is just one volume. This is in 2 volumes that started representing Lepcha as a primitive, savage, and dying race. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, all of you can put up your videos, and if you have questions, I know there were a couple of questions. Vibhaji, you had a couple of questions. If you want to take over the mic and ask her, ask Dr. Nandini Bhattacharya about, I know there was one question on her methodology, being being a social anthropologist. There was, if you could ask those questions, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to scroll up to find out what it means, just typing. Yeah, hi Nandini, that was very interesting. I was kind of interested to know how, from being a Sanskritist and also writing about the Hindu law, in colonial times, how did you move on to Lepcha? You did mention something in the beginning, but I could not kind of understand as to what made you move to an ethnography of Lepcha. And did you also undergo a training in anthropology, or it's the ethnographic method that you used? And how did you go about it?
Vibhaji, this is a difficult question. I am a
And you
historian.
studied with Professor Matilal, huh?
Yes, and
Yes.
Professor Tapan Ray Chaudhary and Professor Matilal. You are also from Oxford. I was a student
Yes,
of
yes.
St. Anne's College.
Okay.
And
because as I heard Matilal and my ears pricked, Ah.
so actually, I used to go to Darjeeling. Actually, I have a very difficult trajectory. I did not want to remain in academic. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. Okay, once I came back from Oxford, then it was a completely failed, initiative. But my Hindu law, actually, it was published from OUP, and I'm not taking any pride, but it is taught in many, many leading universities in the world. but I was a bit fed up with archive. So I thought that when I used to go to Darjeeling for my business enterprise, and I found that those people, please don't, I mean, I'm really telling you from my mind, those are considered, particularly by us, the Bengalis, as drivers and hotel boys. And I used to talk to them. Then I found that they have got so much rich cultural heritage. Then I thought that I should start with, I should start that after my failed entrepreneurial enterprise. So in 2006, I started uh, on Darjeeling. I worked on mostly all the communities. Then I worked on Sikkim and Darjeeling on the Mangar community. Then I worked on the Mangar community. They are called Magar in Nepal. In Nepal also, I exclusively worked on the Magar community. But I wrote this book, and I was invited by this primitive tribal board and the Lepcha tribal board. So I became so much engaged with the Lepcha and Magar people, and I love doing it. I want to do it again, and I feel that this is very important. I have done a proper historical book. My former boss, I would say, he was so nice to me, Shakti Sinhaji. He was here in this presentation, and he congratulated me. Actually, as senior fellow of Nehru Memorial, again I worked on law. My subject was colonial legal formation in Northeast India. So I'm finishing the manuscript. Once it is done, I don't think I will not go back to law again. So one, I worked on Hindu code law, then customary law, because law in Northeast India is mostly customary law. I want to devote my life, if I survive Corona, to study the marginal communities in eastern, northeastern Himalayas. Thank you, Vibha.
Okay, thank you for that. We have Dr. Vijay Lakshmi Bose with the question. Her hand is raised.
Yes.
Suddenly lost her. Maybe she.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, here I am. Thank you so much. অসম্ভব ভালো লাগলো.
Thank
That
you.
means I really enjoyed it. I grew up near the Tista. I grew up in Jalpaiguri, so that area is very close to my heart. Wanted to ask you a question about the religion. You said that they were Christians, but they were more allied to the Lepcha religion and their gods. Could you explain it a little, please?
Actually, I mean, this is a complex story. If I could show the documentary film, I could show that lectures, they really believed, they did not believe or believe, but they were helpless. What could they do? I mean, all of us were helpless when we were colonized. So in Pedong, if you go, I'm sure you have been to Pedong, there is a figure, mother-like figure.
Yes, yes.
In front of a church. And in Kalimpong, there is a church which exactly look like a monastery.
Yes.
So I feel I derived that they make the lectures understand that, look, your religion, our religion is not very different. But if you are converted to Christianity, then you will no longer be poor. You will get education, you will get employment. So most of the lectures, they were converted to Christianity, both in Darjeeling and Sikkim. But now when I went to the field trips, even in the remotest area, like in a place called Gitpulbung. It's quite remote, or in Lingsekha. Those lepchas, they were Christians, but they said, well, we go to church off and on. Actually, we don't have a church here, but we always attend all the major festivals of the lepchas. We are lepcha first, and we are dedicated to our ancestral religion. Christian, we are Christians, it's fine. We became Christians, but we are dedicated to our ethnic identity and as well as religious identity. That's what they tell now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vibhaji is asking what kind of Christianity. So I think that it's aligned to my question.
Yes, actually, different sorts. Like there is in Kalimpong, there is a big church and a big bell called McFarlane Church.
Yes.
Most of them came from, they were Irish Christians. Most of them. But some of them also came from Norway, Sweden, Scandinavian countries. So there were all sorts of Christian missionaries, and there were many churches. But you know, Vijay ji, that there is this Graham's School and McFarlane Church. And in Pedong, there is a big church. That was, yes, Billy Graham. Yeah. And that church is also very big. So there were big and small churches everywhere. And from Ireland, from Scandinavian countries, from Scotland, from all, I mean, you know, imperialism is, it went hand in hand with proselytization. So they all came. And now, right now, I mean, it is in a different note. While I am trying to write the passage from custom to customary law, because the tribal communities did not have a customary law. Law is very much a British, a Western concept. They had custom. The British called them customary law. So they wanted, and Northeast India, entire Northeast India, they had lots of tribes. So this person, Jenkins, and David Scott, he invited missionaries to convert the people so that they become introduced to the Western concepts, and they abide by the law introduced by the colonial governance. So in Darjeeling and Sikkim, it is almost the same process. Yes, I'm talking about Jenkins. Yeah, David Scott, Jenkins, each one. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have, and I think Chuba Toshi mentioned that they were animists before Christianity. That's correct, right?
Well, actually, I have some stupid ideas or particular ideas. Actually, animism. What is animism? I mean, this is a colonial attribute, right? So they used to, I mean, in that sense, Hindus were also animist, because we worship the lingas, we worship stones. So, and animism they used as an to inferiorize them. But yes, if you ask the question, they were animists, and they are still animists now. They are kind of going back to their animistic tradition, if you call it animism, but it is a very political term.
Okay. And yeah, most of the time we are very swayed by these terms that are fixed and we don't revise them, but they have such different connotations. So I'm glad that, you know, you're speaking about these things, and maybe I've not gone through your work, and I should now. And I'm so glad that you gave this lecture and that you're actually, you know, revising these terminologies that have stuck on for such a long time. And they actually skew our whole perception about these things. And it's very important that we question these terms, right? So we have Upasana Chetri with a question. Upasana, if you could take over the mic, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah. Hello.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Upasana from Darjeeling, and I wanted to.
Yes,
Hello, ma'am.
yes, yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, I wanted to. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you. Could you shed light on the material culture of the lectures, like their tradition of erecting menhirs, triliths, the long chalks as they are called?
Oh, that is the time when the Tibetans took over Sikkim. Actually, some disciples of Guru Padmanabha came, and they said that they came here to settle, and they want to make a treaty, just as settler. So they were the Lepcha king and the representatives of Guru Padmanabha or the disciples. They came and they met in Longchalk, and they made the treaty. But the Lepchas did not know that they were followed by a big I mean, cavalier actually. They all came with horse, and they were all warriors. And I mean, really, without much uh, fight, they took over Sikkim. That is the Long Chalk um myth, or maybe it is history.
Ma'am,
Yes.
because such kind of are found all over
Sorry.
in places like ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can hear you.
Long chalks, the generic lids, here's that were erected.
Actually, now, all the traditions have been kind of revised. If you go to some houses, you will get the long chalk sign. I mean, three stones, one long and two smaller ones. And this is a kind of a symbol. I don't know. I went to Pochok, I went to Lingsekha, I went to Mongalbare, I went to so many other places, and in front of the house, that long chalk is erected. And they said that this is kind of symbolic to them. And actually, I also forgot to, I mean, this is in the documentary film about Sadirlang, that Sadirlang is also a very auspicious stone. I mean, they believe that if people keep Sadirlang in their house, the house is protected from any evil. And most interestingly, the Lepcha people believe that Sadirlang, they dropped with the lightning as stone, in the form of stone. The veracity of this belief, I have no idea, but I have seen Sadirlang.
Ma'am, sadar longs are actually polished, grounded cells, no?
Yes, but the mythical connotation is slightly different. People say that
Yes, ma'am.
if you if you soak it in the water and give it to your cow, your cow's disease will be okay, and even human disease will be human can recover from the water soaked from Sutherland. So all sorts of myths, and maybe not myth, and actually in the documentary film I have shown, actually I have got plenty of books, how can I show all these books, that Lepcha community has enough command over the medicinal plants. It is really amazing, because in thrice I went to uh, that hill where Gebuachok's, oh, in Alagara.
Damsangati.
Went twice to Damsanguri. And I found the lecturers are picking this leaf, that leaf. I said, why you were picking this? They said, oh, this is for arthritis. Oh, this is for asthma. So they have got incredible knowledge about the medicinal plants. Now they're doing it commercially in Kalimpong and Sikkim.
Okay. Ma'am, in this place, it's near Manebanjang. It's called Majua. There are 9 stones which are aligned very haphazardly. They're very haphazardly kept, and they they represent Kanchenjunga. They cannot go and worship Kanchenjunga from very near to them, so they worship those stones. Like they are the replica of Kanchenjunga. They worship it that way.
Hmm. Actually, they worship the they believe that they are. I mean, they come from Pumju, the abode of snow, and they come to the earth, and when their souls depart, they go back to that place. Actually, that's what I written in my parting, the last, because Lapan Sonamsering Lepcha, he showered love and blessings on me since 2006. He has died. I mean, he was 96. I'm sure you know about him. So
Yes,
that
ma'am. Ma'am, I've
was,
met him.
you met him. So he
Yes,
is a
ma'am.
wonderful. I wish I could show. I mean, that film is mostly about Shanam Sharing and his music, and he performed as Bongting, because there was no Bongting and Mun. Bongting means traditional priest, and Mun is traditional priestess. He, I mean, he did it since 1950, and he discovered a character, Gebuachok, and that 20th December, that festival in Damsanguri is celebrated in the name of Gebuachak, in the memory of Gebuachak.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, it was an interesting talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Upasana. We have a question from Jenny, and then we have Dr. Anjali. She wanted to ask about songs. So we'll go with Jenny's question first, and then Dr. Anjali.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to listen to you this morning. In what ways has the study of the Lepcha influenced you personally as someone observing them from the outside? And what specific values can they teach us as people living in a mainstream culture?
So you asked me why I'm inspired to study the Lepcha community.
I'm asking you, how has your study of the Lepcha influenced you personally as somebody observing them from the outside? And what values can they teach us, for us, those of us living in a mainstream culture?
Well, you will laugh at me in the first place. Well, not in the first place. I will first. In 2006, I started a project given to me by the Ministry of Culture on all the communities in Darjeeling. There are 21 communities, and for my for the Lepcha community, I met Lapan Chunamsaring, and he inspired me so much. Then I went to Sikkim. I mean, you know, Darjeeling, Sikkim, it is my second home in a way. So, I mean, they inspired me so much. Then I found, okay, they are so less in number, but they are so humble, modest, but so diligent. What they do it with all sincerity, and their heart is very big. But you know what, I'm sorry to say that when I went third time to meet Suram Sering, Lapan Suram Sering, his eldest son asked me, you know, there are many films, I mean, people come from outside, film on the lectures, and they get nothing in return. And Mr. N.T. Lepcha, he asked me, son, that people come here, they document, and you know, Shanam Sering, he constructed an ethno-history museum on the cultural heritage of the Lepcha community in Kalimpong. This is one of a kind museum. So he asked me, look, Dr. Panda, people come here, they take my father's interview, they take the interview of the people, they go to places as a primitive community, but we get nothing in return. Our situation, it was long ago, our situation never improves. I said, Mr. Lepcha, if I can, I will give you something in return. And then when I was working with Malana Abul Kalam Azad, then unfortunately for a long time, unfortunately it was discontinued. I also had some personal problems, so I'm going to go Delhi. Then the lecture board offered me. By then I wrote the book to make this documentary film. And after that, the lecture community, both Darjeeling and Sikkim, particularly this gentleman, told me that, ma'am, we are so grateful to you. You are the one who gave us something in return, because you have recorded our helplessness, our culture, our history, our intention to move forward. And how they influence me, I don't know. You will don't laugh at me. Number one, this going to the hills, I'm an asthmatic person, so this going to the hill cured my asthma substantially, this climbing up and down the hills. Secondly, I get so much warmth and love from the people, which I hardly get. And their humility is is you know, inimitable. So if I could learn it, I don't know. I mean, it is difficult to learn, but I try to learn it.
Thank you so much. And we have Dr. Kapila. You had a question on whether on the song. So if you could ask that question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, Nandini.
Hi,
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 Nandini.
Anjali.
How wonderful to listen to you. And I really
Like Shonali, I did not know anything about the Lepcha. So this was so innovative, and I'm so happy that, you know, you listened to their voices. Now, as you know, I'm so interested in the song, and the song is a very integral part of the intangible cultural heritage of any community. So have
Yes.
there been recordings of the songs of the Lepchas, and has somebody tried to understand the meaning of the songs? You know, particularly the role of women in the community and the way the women are centered in the community and the power that they hold within the family and in the external community. It would be so lovely to listen to their songs, and if somebody's deconstructed the meaning of the songs.
Actually, this is a very good idea. And honestly, I want to do it.
Yeah, that would
This
be
is a
lovely.
very difficult project. And
Huh.
they have got lovely songs, old songs. And
Lovely.
now, and it is very interesting. Actually, I couldn't show the video. I mean, you can see that mostly the women are dancing, and there are so many instruments, all the old, like our bean, like our, iktara, the
Yeah,
bowls
yeah, yeah, yeah,
instrument.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, these are beautiful, and actually, I have been doing a lot of things, but I hope I can do it as my next project, if I can do it.
Nandini, I would love to help you, and Molly is also online. Molly, I don't know if you're listening to us, because they have a whole Janpat Sampat, the department that Molly heads is very keen on, you know, documenting the cultural, intangible cultural heritage. So I
Yes.
think this is something that definitely needs to be done, because,
And
you know, like,
this is not my own work, it needs a team. And
yeah,
if you are there with me, I will be so much privileged.
of course, I'm delighted. Let's talk to Molly about this, honestly. Huh? I think it's a great idea. Thank you so much, Nandini. It's
Thank you,
delightful.
Andy.
Yes,
Thank
even
you.
I'm on. If you do this, I'd love to go back and do some of that,
Yeah,
some of the
Satyalakshmi.
documentation.
Thank you so much.
Molly will say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined late, because I'm very heavily drugged and drowsy. So I couldn't get out of my slumber but somehow managed towards the last part of it. And yeah, I thought it was very, very informative and interesting. I don't know much about the Lepchas though, but the stone worship is definitely, something of great interest to me. And it's kind of prevalent among so many different communities all across the globe, that how the stone is perceived to be the carrying the sense of the divine. But here we're talking about the women's song, so I would be, yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and we can also think of a larger team, or maybe we can have, just phases one by one, but a comprehensive, then you do the documentation of women's songs in, all other communities as well. So that would be very great. But to begin with, it can be lepchas. So let the corona be over and the funds begin to flow in, because as you all know that it's very, very tough now. Institutions don't have money and
Yes,
funds.
yes.
So
This is my dream project, Molly. I must tell you
I
that,
hope, yeah, that we will be able to fulfill your dream.
and I
But
have sent you the documentary film
okay, on you.
in your I didn't see a mail ID. You can check.
Okay, I'll check.
So that will be my, if I feel so scared. The entire area is infested by corona, and we have our roof and this computer. That is the only outlet in life in Kolkata, because my husband is, he has a lot of comorbidity. um, but I just can't stay at home, because I'm so used to travel and go to the hills. You can understand. This is not one day's job. So I will be.
It's for all of us. We are all waiting to go to the hills, Vandana.
Yes, I know. And
Anjali and I have a program to go. We would like to visit the HICS. And I was just going to say that all along the Tista, there are songs about the Tista and the
Yes.
other male river, which is one of the few male rivers in India.
Yeah,
You know,
that is Rangit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are songs along that river and the songs of the communities
Yeah, there
along
are plenty of
the
songs.
river, and the myths are fascinating.
Yes.
And as you go up towards the Himalayas and downstream as well.
Yes.
It's a fascinating cultural landscape which needs
Yes.
to be documented.
Yes, actually, Sonam's Serinji, he did all these things. You know, the old songs, then the later variety, I mean, about many kinds of songs, and I have got people to translate for me, and I'm trying. Nepali is enough for me, and English. So, but at least there will be people to help us, and this is very interesting. And there are also some other rivers. Like one river is Ranikula. This is also a very major river,
Okay.
and you know, I mean, there are songs about all those rivers. There are songs about all the lakes, because some clan belong to a lake, some clan belong to a mountain. I mean, Lepchas are divided into clans. So, and I mean, there are songs relating to all those clans, lakes, mountains, rivers, not only Rongnu and Rongit, but also other lakes and rivers like Ranikula. And very interestingly, in Ranikula, there is a hot spring. God knows. I mean, it was so down below, I couldn't go there. But I found the water is coming up, bubbling water coming up.
Thank you so much. Dikila Lepcha is talking about a festival coming up on the 8th of August. Dikila Lepcha.
I know. What is it? This is in Jongu?
Dikila?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, is it in Jongu? Are
No,
you
ma'am.
from Sikkim?
Yeah, I'm from Sikkim, ma'am.
So where is you? There was he was the deputy. He became the deputy speaker. He once took me to Jongu, that August festival.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, we celebrate this festival now in state. I mean, in district wise. Earlier, we used to celebrate in capital in Gangtok, but since 2-3 years, we are celebrating this specifically in Tendong Hills, which is located in South Sikkim, Dentam.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So but this year, due to this pandemic, it won't be possible. But still, we celebrate this festival. As you were saying that, though now I'm a Buddhist by birth, and you were talking about the Christianity also. Yeah, I believe that due to this, as whatever the reasons you have said in your previous talk, I strongly believe that because of this socio-economic, and then even for this coming of the missionaries, they influence a lot. And even my cousins, most of my cousins from my paternity, I mean my mother side, they are from they are Christians, but some we are Buddhist also. But as you said that we believe Lepcha first, and whatever the festivals we have, that this coming 8th is very important for us, because we believe that if there won't be, I mean, if that Tendong Hill won't be there, then that there won't be any history or any name or any identity of Lepchas, because whatever the folklores which you were talking about, this Tista and Rangi, so that during that time there was a flood, and the Lepcha, they don't know where to go. Then they saw one hills, so they all climbed to the hills and they started praying to Idburum, and that goddess came and goddess helped Lepchas. So we believe that then that in this respect that we are we are praying to our Tendong Hill, so that because of Tendong Hills we are here. So this is about the Tendong Lorum. Tendong Lorum Fat is Tendong is the name of the hill, and Ho is a yeah, is a
And there
hill,
the
and
Lepcha
Rumfat.
people took refuge actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a question from Palmu Kileo. So forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Palmu, if you could take over the mic, please.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Am I audible? Hello.
Your voice is very low, Palmu. If you could come nearer the mic, please.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, my question is, yeah. Ma'am, so this is a question regarding the Lepcha culture. So you talked about, I mean, the thesis regarding, visiting Kalimpong and all that. So have you visited Jonggu in North Sikkim?
Yes.
And like this is Jonggu. Jonggu is considered as the Lepcha bastion.
Yeah,
so
I know. I couldn't go very far.
Hello?
Yes, I visited.
Hello.
I went once. Yeah.
So ma'am, so I mean, did you find any kind of comparative study in terms of cultural differences amongst the Lepcha of Kalimpong, Jonggu? Because Lepcha, I mean, they're spread over, most of the Himalayan states, like in the northeast, even in Nepal, they have settled, in Bhutan, Darjeeling, mostly Kalimpong. So I mean, what are the differences, cultural differences? Because due to, what do you say? I mean, due to time and period, there are a lot of cultural exchanges due to Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism. So I mean, did you find differences amongst the Lepcha community, how they carry forward their tradition, culture, languages?
Actually, I didn't really find. I went to many remote places like Suntar, Samalbong, Jonggu. Many. I mean, the culture is the same, more or less. I would say in the remote places. But if we talk about the politics, like Darjeeling and Sikkim, then the politics is different. Culture is the same. And Jonggu is now, they are getting access to education. And few years ago, there was a WBCS officer from Jonggu. I'm sure you know about it. Hello?
Yes, Palmu, we can hear you.
Hello?
Palmu, your voice is very faint. So if you could get closer to the mic. Perhaps we've lost her. I don't know. So even Jenny has a question. So maybe till the time Palmu comes back, Jenny, you can ask your question.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm wondering, when you speak of the Lepcha community, do you still refer to them as primitive? I'm not too sure what you mean in the modern context. What does that mean?
I contest the word actually. Primitive is a very colonial word. I mean, it is the binary, civilizational binary, primitive versus civilized. So I actually contest the word because there was also, if you talk about primitive, then in British they also had a primitive past. The Gaul were primitive, the Visigoths were primitive. So I mean, and now after Corona, we are redefining the civilization because I'm sure Shonali would agree that Corona is mostly an urban disease. It did not reach to the remote rural areas. So when I studied the Lepcha community, I studied only to dispel the myth, not to endorse the myth.
So you still refer to them as what now?
I
Do
mean,
you consider them to be primitive in terms of their agricultural practices, or how? What part of what do you define them as nowadays?
actually, I mean, it initiates a great debate. Although June cultivation is not to be recommended, but the Lepcha community and most of the communities there, and now Sikkim has become an organic state. So, I mean, in that sense, you can define the entire Sikkim as primitive. And agriculture, yes, they used to practice June cultivation, but they usually practice terrace cultivation. And primitive, I um, I don't endorse and like this political term, which it is a colonial term, I would say.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jenny. And Palmu, I can't see her. Okay. So at this point, if we don't have any questions, I have some announcements to make. So just a second. Yes. So next week on the 9th of August, we have a talk by Dr. Shravana Borkotopi on hybrid Hinduism, a study of Hindu traditions from alternate lenses. Now, she's as a historian, she studies Indian religions focusing on esoteric rituals and gender, particularly in Hinduism, focusing on the Shakta Tantra. So she's an insider, so she'll talk a lot about the Shakta Tantra. So she will be on next week on the 9th of August. And because she is in the US, and if you remember last week, I had discussed with all of you if it would be okay if we start at 8:30 p.m. on Sunday instead of 4. So I'll make sure that I put a reminder. So I know that all of you might forget and come at 4 and see that there's no talk happening. So next Sunday, we'll have the talk at 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, if that's okay with you. And Shravan is a very good friend of mine, and her lecture is really good. So you really don't want to miss this. And we will also have Dr. Alok Tripathi, Dr. Prabhakar, who are archaeologists. Dr. Alok Tripathi will be speaking on myth and reality. He's excavated sites like Dwarka, and he will be talking about myth and reality. And we will have Dr. Prabhakar. We haven't decided a topic. He's also from the Archaeological Survey of India. And of course, we will have our very own Dr. Vibha Joshi. She will also be talking at the end of this month. So we have a lineup of very, very good speakers, and we have to keep this community of ours, even though the corona is really, taking that thing away. But this is our window to our academic world. And for those who want to step into this world and hear about what academics speak about, because we want to share this knowledge with everyone. And today has just been one of those moments where, us as academics, so many of us have been oblivious of such an important community like the Lepchas, and Dr. Bhattacharya has led us towards it. So Thank you, Dr. Nandini, for that. And I hope all of us with this community can further our research and do projects together, collaborative work. And those of you who are here and who really want to speak on this platform, please write. And Dr. Anjali has also given me a list of very, very good speakers, and they will be coming up the first week of September onwards. So let's keep this going. Let's not, let it die. And all of the speakers who have spoken till now, Dr. Anjali, Dr. Molly Kaushal, we'd all spoken, and Dr. Parth, that we should come up with a digest of all these wonderful 12, 13 lectures that we've had till now, and many more which we will have in the future, so that we can all put it all together in a sort of a commemorative volume of what happened during Corona, that we were able to do this.
That will be wonderful.
Yeah. So if any of you have any suggestions, please write to us. All of us are here as a team. It's just not about me. It's about everybody who's involved.
All of us.
Yeah,
all of us are lovely. Thank you so much, Shonali. It's your grit and your patience, your dedication that takes us all together. We are there with you all the time, every moment.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without your support, all of your support. And like promised, I will put all the Abhayji's lecture and Dr. Nandini's lecture. Just give me a little time because I have to put it together. So,
Sonali, if you could put a picture of the All-Chi book on the Himalayan platform, our WhatsApp, and a little write-up on that, that'll be nice. Just take a picture and
Dr. Nandini, thank you very much. Thank you, Sonali. As usual, I'm very appreciative. I'm happy to be with you all. It's a very early morning, but I make the effort because I want to be with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. It's such a pleasure to hear your voice every week.
Blessings.
And soon, Dr. Vijay and I will also, I think, after we finish the report, we'll talk about this new site that we have, which has always been there, but we have kind of discovered it again. So we'll talk about it and have a lovely evening. So you can say your byes and we can call it.
Bye,
Vijay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Bye, Sonali.
Bye.
Bye.
All of you.
Bye. Shonali. Bye. Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye.